She recoiled the instant his shadow crossed the doorway, her breath tearing from her chest as if the room itself had turned into a trap. Her body moved before her mind could stop it, shrinking back, arms raised in a useless shield, eyes filled with a terror that had been learned over many silent nights. The words burst from her like a wound reopening, a desperate plea not born of pride but of survival, because she had learned that touch was never gentle, never safe. The Duke saw all of it in a single heartbeat, the fear, the trembling, the instinct to disappear, and then his gaze fell lower, to the dark stains of pain hidden beneath torn lace and faded silk. Bruises told a story no one had listened to before, and in that moment everything he believed about her, about power, about himself, began to change. Before the story continues, if you believe in kindness and second chances, and in the idea that one moment of compassion can change an entire life, please like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, leave a comment and subscribe to the channel. Channel name. Your support helps stories like this reach hearts that need them most. She had arrived at the Duke's estate like a rumor carried by the wind, quiet, unwanted, and easily dismissed. To the world, she was merely a distant relation taken in out of obligation, a fragile ornament placed in a cold, towering house where marble floors echoed with loneliness. No one asked where she had come from, and no one truly wanted to know. Her past clung to her like a shadow, but she had learned to keep it folded tightly inside, wrapped in silence and obedience. Every step she took through the grand halls felt borrowed, as though at any moment she might be told she did not belong. The servants watched her with curiosity mixed with indifference, and she learned quickly to make herself small, invisible, harmless. The Duke, on the other hand, was a man shaped by control and restraint. His life had been forged in expectations heavier than iron, his emotions trained into stillness. He ruled his estate with precision, respected and feared in equal measure. Known for his sharp mind and colder heart, compassion, he believed, was a luxury that weakened authority. He had seen too much betrayal, too much loss to trust softness. When he first noticed her, it was only because her presence disrupted the order of his carefully managed world. She moved like someone who expected to be punished for existing, and that unsettled him in ways he could not immediately name. Days passed in a quiet tension. She avoided his gaze, flinched at sudden sounds, and wore long sleeves even in the warmth of afternoon sunlight. The Duke told himself it was none of his concern. People carried their own burdens, and his role was not to pry. Yet something about her silence felt heavier than pride. It was the silence of someone who had learned that speaking only made things worse. He began to notice details he had once overlooked. The way she hesitated before entering a room, the careful calculation in her movements, the exhaustion etched into her face when she thought no one was watching. The moment everything changed was not meant to happen. It was an accident born of proximity and poor timing. He entered a side chamber unannounced, expecting it to be empty, and found her instead, struggling to adjust a sleeve that had slipped down her arm. The bruises were unmistakable, deep, layered, old and new overlapping like chapters of a story written in pain. Her reaction was immediate and visceral, a reflex carved by repeated harm. She pulled away, panic flooding her features, her body remembering what her mind wished to forget. The plea that escaped her was raw, stripped of dignity, and it struck him harder than any accusation ever could. In that instant, the Duke was no longer a ruler surveying a subject. He was a man confronted with the consequences of cruelty he had chosen not to see. The room felt smaller, heavier, as though the walls themselves were listening. He understood then that whatever she had endured was not a single misfortune but a pattern, a life shaped by fear and endurance. And for the first time in years, something inside him cracked. He did not reach for her again. Instead, he stepped back, giving her space, letting her breathe. That simple restraint, so insignificant to him, was monumental to her. She waited for anger, for dismissal, for punishment. None came. Instead, there was silence, not the threatening kind she knew too well, but a quiet that allowed her heartbeat to slow. The Duke left the room without a word, but his absence did not bring relief. It brought confusion. From that day forward, subtle changes began to ripple through the estate. Orders were given quietly, protections put in place without explanation. The Duke ensured she was never alone with anyone who made her uneasy. Her living quarters were moved closer to light and warmth. Meals were sent regularly, nourishing rather than sparse. He did not ask her to explain herself, did not demand a confession of pain. He understood instinctively that forcing her story from her would only reopen wounds she was barely surviving. For her, the changes were terrifying. Kindness felt like a trick, a prelude to something worse. She had learned that mercy was temporary and conditional. Each gentle gesture filled her with suspicion and dread, because she did not know how to exist without fear. At night, memories clawed at her sleep, reminding her that safety had always been an illusion. Yet slowly, reluctantly, her body began to respond to the absence of harm. She slept a little longer. She ate without nausea twisting her stomach. She walked through the gardens and noticed, for the first time, that flowers grew even in harsh soil. The Duke watched from a distance, wrestling with emotions he had long buried. Guilt pressed heavily on him, not because he had caused her pain directly, but because he represented a world that allowed it. He had benefited from silence, from not asking questions, from assuming suffering was someone else's responsibility. Now, faced with the evidence of that suffering, he could not return to ignorance. He began to investigate quietly, uncovering fragments of her past that confirmed his worst fears. She had been traded, controlled, hurt by those meant to protect her. Her voice dismissed as inconvenience. Anger followed, sharp and consuming. But it was not the reckless fury of revenge. It was a controlled, deliberate resolve. The Duke understood power better than most, and he decided that if power had been used to break her, it could also be used to shield her. Those responsible would face consequences, not out of vengeance but justice. Yet he kept this from her, knowing that true safety meant not forcing her to relive what she had survived. Time passed, measured not in days but in small victories. She learned that doors could remain unlocked, that raised voices did not always precede violence, that touch, when invited, could be gentle and respectful. The Duke never demanded gratitude, never reminded her of what he provided. He treated her not as a broken thing to be fixed, but as a person reclaiming herself piece by piece. That distinction mattered more than he realized. Her transformation was not sudden or dramatic. Healing never is. Some days she regressed, fear returning without warning. On those days, the Duke did not withdraw his patience. He understood that recovery was not a straight path. Slowly, she began to meet his gaze. Slowly, she spoke, not of the past at first, but of trivial things. Observations about the estate, the changing seasons. Each word was a risk, a step into vulnerability. The Duke, too, changed. The rigid lines of his authority softened. He listened more than he spoke. He learned that strength was not diminished by empathy, but deepened by it. The estate itself seemed to breathe differently, as though compassion had altered its very foundations. Servants noticed the shift, responding in kind, treating her not as a burden but as a valued presence. As months turned into seasons, the past loosened its grip. She found purpose in small acts of care, tending gardens, assisting others who carried quiet pain of their own. Her scars did not vanish, but they no longer defined her. She stood taller, laughter returning cautiously like sunlight after a storm. And the Duke realized that saving her had, in many ways, saved him too, from isolation, from emotional exile, from the lie that power required hardness. Near the end of her journey, she chose to speak of what she had endured, not because she was asked, but because she was ready. Her story, once locked behind fear, became a testament to survival. The Duke listened without interruption, bearing witness, understanding that being heard was as vital as being protected. In that shared silence, something unspoken but profound passed between them. Respect, trust, and the recognition of shared humanity. If this story has touched your heart, if it has reminded you that compassion can change lives and that healing is possible even after deep pain, please take a moment now to like this video, share it, and subscribe to channel name. Your engagement helps keep these stories alive and reaching those who need them. And before the ending, we have a special request for you. Please comment below with one word that describes how this story made you feel. Your words matter more than you know. The Duke never touched her without consent, never assumed ownership of her recovery. He simply remained present, steadfast, offering safety without expectation. And in that space, she learned that her body was her own, her voice valid, her future unwritten. The bruises faded, but the lesson endured. That one moment of seeing, truly seeing another's pain, can alter the course of two lives forever.